doesn't have to be perfect.
Why is all this staff waiting?
Sorry? No.
Turn on. Oh, that's a car.
Especially now that we're moving, we aren't really likely to be getting any more people on board. So if you would like to spread yourselves out amongst the carriage at all, that is all good, definitely at this point.
Would you like me to record it? You don't want me to put my phone on the spot?
No.
Alrighty, well, good morning everybody, and welcome aboard the West Coast Wilderness Railway. Welcome on the Tipekana and the King journey for today. Now my name is Kieran, I am the commentary guide up this end of the train. I'm also the guard on board today, so I've just been popping around making sure we've got everybody and everything that we need, and waiting for the little green flag so that we can
this
depart.
will be one of my last
Also on board
ones
today we
from
have
the Welsh
Tom doing the commentary for the other end of the train.
Welsh will
We also have Rachel
close
looking after the Wilderness Carriage
because of the
16,
bleach
we've got Laura
overpass,
looking after
so-
Wilderness Carriage 11. We also have Mai on board today as our guest service attendant, getting around behind the scenes, making sure that everything is kept running nice and smoothly. Perhaps more importantly, today we have Jessie, and I've been picked up in the diesel loco. Now, just as we get started, I do have a quick safety briefing to run through. Now, our number one golden rule is to please avoid accessing the tracks or the rail corridor. The tracks can get quite slippery, and visibility from the locomotive cabin is poor. So walking on or near the rail corridor risks your safety as well as that of our staff. So we do appreciate your cooperation in keeping everybody safe. While you're on board and the train is moving, the safest place to remain is in your seat, so we do ask that you generally remain seated. The train can stop suddenly, or there can be some jerking around in the carriages, things like that. And if you do need to move through the carriage, for instance in this heritage carriage we have a bin up that far end which you're all welcome to use, or in the wilderness carriage if you're accessing the balcony, we just ask that you use the wooden tops of the seats as handrails to steady yourself as you move along the carriage. Please don't open any of the doors while the train is moving. That does include these red intercarriage doors. They are for staff only. But it is above the red intercarriage doors, at either end, every carriage, that you'll find our emergency brakes. So in the unlikely event of some kind of emergency, we might ask someone to pull those brakes. All you need to do is reach up, grab that handle, pull it in line with the aisle. It'll make a loud hissing sound and bring the train to a stop. Now once we arrive at our destination, lower landing, please do just be careful as you're disembarking the train. There is a bit of a gap between the carriage and the platform, and it does rain from time to time in the rainforest, so it can get a little wet and slippery out there. So please stick to the pathways and be careful on any grassy or muddy areas. And finally, I do just ask that while the commentary is going, just while I'm talking, you could keep your voices to an absolute minimum. Noise does build up pretty quickly in these carriages, and it just means that everybody can hear the lovely stories that we've got for you throughout the day. The alternative option which we have is what we call the authentic 1930s train kid experience, which includes an exclusive dressing down by one of our train drivers and the opportunity to run behind the train as we make our way home later. Well, I'll just hop straight into my next section. So, we're pulled away from the station. I would like to once again welcome you all on board. The environment that you'll see around you today is incredibly unique, and it holds a special place in our hearts and that of our community. So with that being said, we would like to acknowledge that we are travelling through what is the unceded land of Palawa people. Our knowledge of the Palawa across our region is quite sparse, but we respect and we support the ongoing journey of local Tasmanian Aboriginals and pay respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. The story of this railway is one of risks, of endurance, of sheer determination and a battle for survival. But above all, it is one of community. This is the story of the incredible men, women and children who all fought to make a life for themselves here in the Wild West. Our story is over 130 years old, and it starts with the piners and miners that made their way in an inhospitable corner of the world. It continues today with you, through tourism, through the sharing of our story, and through our local community, for whom we're an economic boost as well as a source of heritage and pride. As we depart Strahan, and we make our way along Macquarie Harbour, take a second to imagine life out here all those years ago. Your arrival in Strahan is a little further around the harbour, and there is no locomotive or comfortable carriage waiting to greet you. Instead, you had better hope for good weather as you board an old steam barge headed up the King River for a port settlement called Tipekana, one of the busiest shipping ports in the state. And if the weather is clement, you'll enjoy a lovely punt up the King River and disembark several hours later onto a trackle platform by the river's edge. You might stop in for a cold drink at the local hotel, have a yarn with a railway worker, or post an update of your journey home at the post office before boarding the train to continue your journey inland. In less idyllic weather, though, you'll wonder what the local tourism association had been talking about when they sent those lovely images of a peaceful river setting to the Tasmanian rail office in Melbourne. Or were they pulling your leg? Where is that strange beauty that they advertised? Because you literally can't see the river's edge for the rain. Water is a swirling monster around you, and you're rather in fear of your life as you head the wrong way up a coursing river, rubbing wet shoulders with the rough and grubby rail workers beside you. Once at the port of Tipekana, you're greeted by grim wood buildings and disembark not on that pleasant platform that you would have had in calmer weather, but at the makeshift wharf, several metres higher and much closer to the train platform. You see, Tipekana had 2 dedicated wharfs to accommodate the ever-changing King River's water level, and it had a high water mark that sat well above either wharf from the regular flooding. From the port of Tipperary, your journey would continue by train to Queenstown. You would have passed Camp Spur, an active community settlement and base from which this apt railway had its innovative beginnings. Now that is where the workers that eventually extended the line from Tipperary through to here at Strahan were based. At the halfway point of this 35-kilometre line, you can stop in at Double Barrel Station and admire the tenacity of the small community that lives there. This is a wild place to call home, but you may still glimpse a cow or two, residents of the small dairy farm that provides milk to the communities of the rainforest. They are often cut off by landslides, floods, and even bushfires. It's a place not touched by sunlight for 3 months of the year, sitting under the steep Rhinadina Saddle, which is now the second steepest operational steam haul in the southern hemisphere. Your trip through Rhinadina and Ledford Station would have been hopefully uneventful and an opportunity to gaze upon the incredible wilderness that surrounds you before arriving in the shanty town known as Queen's Crossing, which we now call Queenstown. This is the world of the intrepid pioneer and of those that lived and worked along the line between 1896 and 1963, when the Mount Lyell Mining and Railway Company closed the line. It is an unforgiving environment that is as unique and strangely beautiful as it is challenging. It's a world where innovation is the key to survival, where men risk it all for ultimate riches. A world where the motto, find a way, make it, resounds as much today as it did when they built this engineering feat of the railway. As we make our way further from civilization and through this area which we call Luana, you can see Paralunati, or as we know it today, Macquarie Harbour. Well, for tens of thousands of years, the Palua occupied Drewry, Tasmania, making them, for a time, the most southerly dwelling people in the world. We know that there were seasonal communities in and around Macquarie Harbour, and they would have been coming here for generation upon generation. And that their stories are hard to come by now is telling in and of itself, and it's part of one of the darkest parts of this region's history. We could perhaps only consider the utter devastation of an incredible and unique river ecosystem to be considered as dark, but we will talk more about that bit later. For now, it's not hard to imagine that the environment that you'll see around you today would look reasonably similar to what it would have looked like thousands of years ago. And outside your window and off to the south, you might be able to glimpse the Tasmanian World Heritage Wilderness Area, globally recognised by UNESCO and a protected area which borders along the southern edge of Paralunati, Macquarie Harbour. Whilst the rainforest that we will travel through today is in fact a combination of crown and forestry land, the forest ecosystems are intertwined, so much of the flora is the very same that you would find in that heritage area. And despite the treacherous body of water that one had to navigate to enter it, Macquarie Harbour did become an attractive fourth destination for the early pioneers. At first it housed convicts, with Sarah Island housing the worst of the Australian criminals, but that settlement was short-lived, with Port Arthur becoming the preferred location. And so, by the mid-1800s, this region was better known for its huge human pines, prized for their timber's shipbuilding qualities and its complete resistance to rot. Piners set up camp throughout the waterways that fed the harbour, while small settlements such as Strahan were established to support their lifestyle. Those that came here described a country of thick vegetation, where grasses and branches grew so densely that a man could be swallowed by them, thinking that he was stepping on muddy earth, but instead falling many feet through a false forest floor. As the piners established camps along the waterways, the fossickers and miners soon made their way west as well. Rumours of gold were started when a mainland-based clergyman, William Clark, predicted gold along the 146th meridian longitude. Well, Clark had already accurately predicted gold on the mainland, and so his opinion carried a lot of weight. Men came here from all corners of the globe, pegging leases, forming syndicates, and making deals both honest and shifty. Long-lasting alliances were made, but equally long-lasting animosity was born. Now, the story of this rail line really gets started when a lease on a mountain named Lyle, which is not too far inland from here, ended up in the hands of a seasoned prospector, James Crotty. Crotty and his team knew that there was gold on Mount Lyle, and they were doggedly determined to get their hands on it. Their gold mine was going to be successful. Their gold mine was going to make them rich. Well, for them, their gold mine turned into a bit of a disappointment. It yielded just enough gold to keep them convinced that there would be more of it, enough to keep them reinvesting any profit that they might have made. And so eventually they sold their gold mine to a gentleman named Anthony Edwin Bose Kelly. Now, Bose Kelly was already involved in silver mining in Zion. He was on the board of directors for a fledgling company just starting out. That company was called Broken Hill Proprietary, or as we know it today, BHP. On a trip to Zion, he had heard of this failing gold mine further south, decided to take a look into it. On inspection, however, he suspected that Mount Lyle might have more than just gold to yield, so he sent some samples off for testing, and they revealed something rather interesting. Now, there wasn't really much gold to be found at Mount Lyle, but there was something else. Copper. A whole mountain of copper. In fact, it turned out to be one of the richest sources of copper for the British Empire. Well, Kelly promptly kept this little find a secret and convinced Crotty and his syndicate to sell their failing gold mine for a song. But he had bought a gold mine, he had bought a copper mine. And when the news broke, after the sale had already gone through, all hell broke loose, and the deception was to start a lifetime rivalry between the two miners. While Kelly established the Mount Lyle Mining Company almost immediately, Crotty set up shop only a few kilometres down the valley, calling his company the North Mount Lyle Mining Company, which the creativity astounds even today. Now the problem for the miners wasn't a lack of precious metal, but the mere 35 kilometres of thick and mountainous rainforest which lay between Kelly's new mine and the nearest shipping port at Strahan. It was a rainforest that had held progress back in this region for over half a century already. If Kelly was going to make his investment pay off, he had to find a way to overcome it. He was going to need tenacity, determination, and a bit of the gambling spirit. He was going to need to find a way or make it.
Luana Station. But why is that not open? Someone has to book it.
There's nothing in the station.
Forever.
See the river now.
What river is that?
George River.
Huh?
The George River.
You'll see on the way back.
Can I have something to eat, please? Why not here?
As you notice, the canopy started to thicken, and maybe your carriage darkened slightly. You can be sure that we've reached Tasmania's full temperate rainforest. Here we receive over 3 metres of rain a year, and the temperate climate encourages some rather unique species to grow and thrive. When we stop at Lower Landing, we will provide a little more information on the flora that you can find in this area, as well as many of their uses, both ancient and modern. It is this rainforest that sets the scene for those workers in the late 1800s that made their way out here. You see, once Bose Kelly got a hold of his mine, he employed some surveyors and told them to find a way through the rainforest and to overcome the steep Regatta saddle. One by one, those surveyors returned with a single message. It cannot be done.
Is that like
There is no way you will get through there. You're mad.
Huh?
Well, Bose Kelly, however, being a very determined man, simply fired every single person without a penny in wages when they told him that he couldn't forge his way through this wilderness. And after a while, the remaining surveyors caught onto the trend. They learned if they wanted to keep their jobs, they had to come out here and find a way through. In the end, the remaining surveyors cut 460 kilometres of bush track in the hopes of finding a way. Now for context, that is comparable to cutting 13 kilometres of bush track for every single kilometre of rail that was eventually laid. See, trains aren't really built to travel on steep, mountainous terrain, so there weren't many models or options to choose from. In the end, it was his engineer-in-chief, Frederick Cutler, who recommended that the King River route be used, and that an innovative new rail design, fresh from the Swiss Alps, be utilised for that steepest 7-kilometre section. Well, Cutler had done it. He had found a way through, but now they had to make it. And so, in 1894, construction began on a railway through impassable rainforest, over impossible hills, and along treacherous, possibly fatal gorges. Permar's leading newspaper, The Mercury, called the surveying effort superhuman and described broken rock-faced scarp that could break off the King River Gorge and bound down 1,000 feet or so. Over 500 men risked life and limb to build the railway line, lured to the west coast with the promise of 6 days a week work for 6 shillings per day. a rather good wage at the time, especially when work was hard to come by. Men arrived by boat to Strahan, that made them on the terrifying journey up the King River by barge. They camped at a spot called Camp Spur, and we're following in their footsteps today, though in a little more comfort than they could have ever hoped for. That barge was initially headed for a settlement on the river called Tipperary, which legend says translates to Kingfisher in one of the local Aboriginal languages, though we are yet to find any solid evidence for this. From here, they would have walked to Camp Spur and were confronted
Is that
by
a
the
river,
reality
Dad?
of a life spent in
What's it
cold,
called?
damp, and somewhat miserable wilderness. To make things even worse, they soon learned that out of that 6 shillings per day, they had to pay for their own food, their own accommodation, and their own work equipment, leaving very little at the end of the day to send back home to their families. Their only way to get back home to those families was to work.
Now that we're in the rainforest and it does get a little bit darker and here the canopy's a bit thicker, we've got a sea on one side, and it is a grayer day in general, I might switch the lights off because you can see out the windows a lot better without looking at your own reflection. If it feels too dark in here, let me know. I can switch the lights back on, that's easy. But yeah, I'll turn them off and let me know how you find it.
Yeah.
This is not at all strong. This is quite a way. This would be a whole day thing, or even more than a day potentially. But up at Corinna, I don't know if you're going up north after this, or if you're going
We're
down
going to
south.
Crown Mountains.
Yeah. Like for instance, if you've already got your trip planned out, this will be a bit much of a detour, I think. But Corinna is north from here. It's up in the Tarpine. You kind of have to get the barge over the Pine River. But then there's a bigger cruise that goes down the Pine River. There's also a little one which I've done quite a few years ago that just goes down to the little area called Brothers Falls, and that's more of just like a 2-hour little hunt. But Corinna is a couple of hours drive from here. You probably want to stay the night.
So many things to see.
There is a lot. Yeah, Tassie's small, but there is a lot going on.
I know. We're like, we can't see everything. So we
Do you know the deciduous beach? Northern Vegas Bunai. It's related to this myrtle that we've got here, which is all these small little fish scaly leaves. But it's the only deciduous tree that's native to Tasmania. And it's like a little alpine shrub that grows. A lot of it's up Cradle Mountain. And Mount Field's the other main place people go to see it. But it's just that now exactly is the time of year when it's turning. So it's just something that's worth having a look for. Yeah. I'm not sure exactly where it is at Cradle, but it would be around. Yeah. There'd probably be some information about it there.
As we travel even deeper into the rainforest, imagine experiencing it for the first time on a barge headed to who knows where. Try and look at this forest through the eyes of someone thinking, we have to get a railway through here. Over 500 men worked sunrise to sundown 6 days a week to complete the line. An impossible task it seemed to many, but for those who had their hearts and their wallets set on exporting copper, there wasn't room to fail. They were to only find a way or make it. Well, the workers started from that port town of Tipekana, and they began working towards Queenstown. They began by clearing a corridor and constructing cuttings using picks, shovels, and wheelbarrows. The intent was to complete the new smelters at Mount Lyell and the railway line at the same time, and both projects were considered of great significance for the West Coast and for Greater Tasmania, attracting a lot of media speculation and interest. On the right hand of Bose Kelly was the man charged with building this railway, Edward Harrison Drewry. Drewry was a man of energy. He'd get things done kind of guy. And so, for most of the workers that Drewry hired, they didn't end up being out here as long as you might think. Because in March of 1897, only 18 months after they began, there was a grand opening for the railway that included dignitaries, brass bands, and even a performance from a world-famous opera singer. We are often asked how many lives were lost during such a short but intense period of activity in an area so incredibly remote. In a world where men were clambering rock faces, creating huge rock cuttings by hand, and laying track under unimaginable circumstances today, how many would you estimate? Well, during the build, 4 lives were lost over the entire project. The first 2 were lost along the Queenstown end, when a freak landslide interrupted all things their afternoon tea break, while a third occurred while building the cuttings that we will travel through along this section of track. The 4th rail worker to lose his life was a young man who was crossing over the quarter-mile bridge late at night. He slipped into the King River and his body wasn't found till morning. So take a moment as we travel along to think of those men who lost their lives while building this remarkable railway, and consider how lucky we are to still be able to experience a piece of the history that they helped to create.
itinerary, it says this will be one of my last.
Not really, no. So they would have come up here on barges from Regatta Point where we went up to Picana, which will go past. That would have all been done on a barge. And then from there they would have mainly been walking, I believe, out to yeah, I think most of them would have been walking. Once they got sections of the line started up, they might have
Are we nearly at the
their way up and down the line. But yeah, a lot of them would have just been walking.
Are we nearly at 2 minutes? Why?
I think so. Even those wood shacks would often just have like a canvas tarp. I mean, they were often only out here for a few months, so it wasn't really long term. Once the mines started and it was all set up a little bit more, there were proper houses and things built. Like Lincoln Town or Tasmania itself was a proper town that had proper houses and post office, a little schoolhouse, double barrel station further along that had a proper homestead and some other little houses to get us around. But Amsterdam is largely just been we did have some books that had some bigger photos in them. I'll look through this and see if we can find a photo, but otherwise it's easy to watch them.
And the train's just like connected here. Oh my, is that a big river? That's a yucky river.
Well, we probably could go a little bit faster, but it would also not be very comfortable. Rattle around, bounce up. You'll be able to see out the windows very either. So it can go pretty fast, but we don't tend to be able to go really fast. And back in the day, when it was hauling lots of copper ore and
track me to the...
You know, some of the engineers probably have even worked on trains before, but it was the type of train that it was completely new and different. The Alps rack and pinion system had only just been invented in the Alps of Europe by a Swiss engineer, and they had absolutely no idea. So it took them a few months of trial and error to get it going. Yeah, so pretty. You can imagine opening it up in a big building in Scotland.
Well, there was all excitement to get it, and then you go, right. River to
Those steam barges that made their way up the King River to Tibakana back in the day, they weren't just for carrying building supplies or rough workers. Others made the journey out here as well. Marion Stitched moved to this region as a young American woman in 1895. She accompanied her husband, Robert Stitched, a young, brilliant American metallurgist and mine engineer, hired by Bose Kelly to manage his mines and smelters. If Driffield had been Bose Kelly's right-hand man, then Robert Stitched was his left. Despite having grown up around the mining towns of Colorado, we do think that Marion might have had a few reservations about the whole idea of moving out here. See, the couple had only been married for a mere few weeks before making the journey from San Francisco, quite a modern city even at the time, to the west coast of Tasmania. In her journal, Marion describes Tibakana as not so much of a fort, but a few logs tied to the bank. Anything more permanent would get washed away in the floods. The structures had to be built up the steep bank to avoid the temperamental river. Dangling on the edge, they looked like they could come sliding down at any moment. It's hard to imagine that what Marion described would soon become the fourth busiest port in all of Tasmania. Engineering feat along the line, the Iron Bridge. We'll talk more about the building of the bridge on the return, but as we cross over, you can imagine this as the site of that thriving port, Tibakana. And as we cross to the other side of the river, you'll be able to see the original site of the township itself, or what remains of it. To the other side of the river, if you look out to the right-hand side of the train, you'll be able to see a cleared area and a steep hillside heading up the bank, perhaps with the remains of an old footpath going up. Well, this was the site of that township. You can imagine it as the site of a pub, a post office, a schoolhouse perched up on top of the hill, and many houses in the bustling environment of a busy port town. Down to the left of the train would have been the original site of the wharves and docks, described as very irregular due to their unique build. With Marion's description, it is hard to believe that hundreds of people not only lived here, but passed through here daily, as well as all the goods to and from Queenstown. Townships such as Tibakana and Strahan, and others along the North Mount Lyell route such as Pillinger and Crotty, grew into thriving communities. Only one of these, Strahan, remains today. others being left to Mother Nature and reclaimed by the rainforest. We will shortly be arriving at Lower Landing Station. It's currently the only remote station that maintains industrial links to our region. Prior to our maintenance period, our rail division team would work with BA purists to bring out literal truckloads of hives on flatbed wagons. Those hives are then transported by truck high up onto the Tipekana Plateau and deep into the rainforest, left there for the season where the bees can get to work doing what bees do best. Now, the bees would be particularly attracted to the quite large, white and pungently sweet-smelling flowers that grow on the leatherwood tree, named that because of the tough and leathery quality of its timber. The leatherwood nectar is then collected and the bees return to the hive where that prized, pure leatherwood honey is created. The hives are then collected at the end of the season and the honey gathered, packaged and distributed across Australia and sometimes even further. Once we arrive at the station, you'll have a chance to try some of that leatherwood honey for yourselves. The plateau is managed today by Sustainable Timbers, the government-owned forestry division. Several times a year we would use those same flatbed wagons to bring out forestry vehicles. They too would head up onto the plateau where there are thousands of Hewlett pine saplings. The saplings were planted by Sustainable Timbers in an effort to eventually replace many of the lost giants that were felled by the piners of the 19th and 20th centuries. Well, that horn means that we've entered our yard limit and we're just about to arrive at the station. So here we will have a short guided walk led by myself today. So if you would like to learn more about the trees that we get in the rainforest, you can head off down the stairs at the end of the platform or behind the boardwalk, or down the boardwalk behind the kiosk. Now the kiosk itself will be open for hot and cold food and drinks. And there will be the honey cart set up outside the kiosk where you can try that leatherwood honey and also the golden bee honey, which we get from plants around here too. There are toilets on the platform, and please do mind your step as you disembark. There is a bit of a gap. Now it will be a little bit wet and slippery today, and if you do go on that forest walk, it can be a little muddy. And please don't go on the balcony, on the veranda, the pier, that is out down there. Now we'll be here for about 50 minutes. There's a long horn when it's time to get back on board. And when you do get back on board, if they could actually get everyone to swap over the aisle from where you're sitting. So if you look at the people that have been sitting across from you, you can give them a wave. They've been your seat warmers for the morning. It just means everyone gets a bit of both views on the way in and on the way out. Welcome in to Lower Landing.